The Merfolk spoilers have arrived. Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and Ravnica Allegiance is now showing more Merfolk cards. Let's see how they're going to affect Modern and Standard. So starting us off, let's look at Combine Guildmage. It's a blue and a green with 2 activated abilities. It's a 2/2 creature. This thing is completely unplayable. So the first ability is just sort of a win more thing. Each creature just adds, any creature that enters a battlefield with a +1/+1 counter gets an additional 1. Not a big deal. Second one is move a +1/+1 counter from target creature you control onto another target creature you control. This has no basis in Modern or Standard. This is a very good ability for draft. So this is just a great draft card to be able to move counters with the adapt mechanic. But like some people are trying to say, well, this would be great in Standard because of Kumena, Tyrant of Erazka. But I mean, seriously, there's Kumena, you've got 4 other Merfolk in play, you're activating Kumena, plus you have the mana and this creature in addition in play to activate this. This is just pure win more. You should be able to win with just like Kumena and 2 other creatures, and if you have 4 other creatures, then you should be winning just with that. So I see no future for this card at all. But then we get to Benthic Biomancer. Now, this is an interesting card because it is a 1 blue Merfolk. We finally are seeing more 1-drops being printed for Merfolk, which is something we need because we are really choking on good 1-drop creatures. So Benthic Biomancer is a 1/1 creature, Merfolk Wizard Mutant, and it's got adapt 1. And whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Benthic Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. So for a blue and a colorless, you get a counter on this thing, plus you have the ability to loot. Now, when I'm looking at new Merfolk cards, the first thing I'm thinking about is how is it going to help me stabilize in games that are trying to go short? Because Merfolk in Modern is already winning in the long game. So when I look at this card for Modern, I gotta understand that, you know, we're already beating Jund, we're already beating Grixis Death Shadow, we're beating Blue-White Control, we're beating Tron, we're beating Jeskai Control, we're beating Grixis Control. All of the games that go long, we are winning. And when we look at this adapt thing, this is only for the long game. It's a creature that you can play early in the game and get some value from it in the late game. So I don't think this is really what I want in Modern Merfolk right now, because when we play with Curse Catcher, it's because it slows the game down to a point where we reach the late game, where we can take advantage in the late game. Making our opponent's spells cost 1 more to cast delays them a turn. I'm playing Mistcaller so that I don't get killed by turn 3 by Arclight Phoenix decks. So I don't get killed by Dredge. So I don't get comboed out by Counters Company too early. So I don't get murdered by turn 2 or turn 3 by Goryo's Vengeance decks. That's why I'm playing with Mistcaller and Curse Catcher, and that's why they are valuable to the Merfolk deck, so that we can stabilize against decks that are trying to win very quickly, because that is the problem with Modern Merfolk, is that we are a very clunky deck, and we need to interact with people very early, or as early as possible. This card does not help that at all. On the other hand, I think it is a very good card. I like the fact that it starts off as a 1-drop and it can get bigger later on. That's actually very important against control decks, because a 1-mana creature isn't worth it. It's just not big enough to win the game, and you have to start playing things like Silvergill Adapt, maybe a Harbinger of the Tide, so you have enough pressure on the battlefield in order to win. Whereas if you can just make this bigger and team it up with a Silvergill Adapt, 4 power on the battlefield is more than enough to put adequate pressure on the opponent. Plus the loot ability, which is very useful. It synergizes great with Oboro, which is something that we could use. But again, we're winning those matchups anyway if we want to. I don't see the value of this card because it's good in the matchups where we're already good against. You can leave the mana up to adapt or to hold up counter magic, but really that mana against the decks where we want it, like the decks that are trying to kill us very quickly, I think what we really want to do is we have to put pressure on the battlefield. On the turns that we have mana up for adapt, I think we need to be putting pressure. So I think it is a good card, but when I try to think about like where does it have a place in modern Merfolk, it would have to be like a very creature-based metagame where there's no graveyard strategy, or like a creature-based metagame where Mistcaller would be worse. Because I do believe that the Merfolk community is underestimating the power of Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. A vanilla 1/1 is very important against a lot of decks. It helps create turn 4 wins. It helps put pressure on other creature-based decks, because you need to have some form of pressure on turn 1, because if you don't, you're going to get run over. You're behind and you're playing catch up. So I actually do think there's a lot of value in just the 1/1 by itself. But this thing has no interaction. I want creatures that can interact. Cards like Harbinger of the Tides and Merfolk Trickster help pull Merfolk ahead by a lot because it interacts with our opponent. This doesn't interact with our opponent at all. So I think for Modern, this is a no-go. Under some narrow circumstances will I want to play with this thing. It does have the Wizard subtype, and there is something to that. Like, I'm always looking at cards like Void Mage Prodigy, which is a card. It's a blue 2/1, and you can pay 2 blue and sacrifice a wizard to counter target spell. But you know, we have a lot of other wizards up our sleeve. Mistcaller's a wizard, Cursecatcher's a wizard. But it does have the wizard subtype, if that helps. So anyway, not really looking at it for modern Merfolk. Let's look at standard Merfolk. This is a great card, I think, for standard Merfolk. Standard Merfolk doesn't have enough really good 1-drops. I mean, Jade Bearer is played, but it's not. I don't think Jade Bearer is ideal. It's just, you know, it's an okay creature, so we play it. Benthic Biomancer is a huge upgrade to Jade Bearer, or maybe you want even more 1-drops. Maybe Merfolk can play with 12 1-drops in the main deck, who knows? But this is a fantastic card in those decks. This is going to be a great early game pressure, while also following up later with value as you go into the late game. You're going to want to be able to loot, to be able to compete with the Izzet decks, to compete with. There are a lot of control decks in Standard, and grindy decks, for example, like the Golgari decks. So I think there actually is a ton of value in this Benthic Biomancer, and definitely if you're going to be playing Standard Merfolk, you're going to want to play it. Now, let's finish that off. It could also potentially go into the mono blue tempo deck, but again, I don't really think so, because this has no evasion, and I think the deck has enough value churning cards like Surge Mare can loot by itself. Not to mention, Curious Obsession draws a bunch of cards anyway. Like, this is not a creature I can put Curious Obsession on. You want to put Curious Obsession on cards like Mistcloaked Herald, which is unblockable, and Siren Storm Tamer, which is also basically unblockable because it has flying. So it flies. Those are the cards you want to put Curious Obsession on. This is not really a good candidate to put it on in the mono blue tempo deck. So I'm curious, is there something I'm missing in Benthic Biomancer? You can let me know, but I don't really see it as a big player in modern Merfolk. It's not addressing any problems that I would have in Merfolk. Like, I don't have any problems with flooding out. I don't have any problems with going to the late game. I'm winning all those games with Merfolk. I want cards that are going to help me, prevent me from getting crushed against Arclight Phoenix decks and Hollow One and Infect and Storm. I don't see this card really helping me at all in any of those matchups. But maybe there's something you know that I don't. Let me know in the comments section below. This has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, evaluating the new Merfolk coming out of the Guilds of Ravnica.